I applied. I ordered a book out of Pro Wrestling Illustrated or The Wrestler, one of those magazines, and it was How to Be a Pro Wrestler. And it was $15. Excuse me, it was $15, and it gave me some of the greatest advice ever. And one of those pieces of advice was, if someone couldn't make a star out of themselves, what do you expect them to do with you? Like when you're finding a wrestling school, don't just go to Plumber Pete's wrestling school and who the hell is this,
Somebody of credibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a list of wrestling schools in the back, and I snail mailed all of them. This is before cell phones and
before the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Hence why you said magazine.
Just aging myself, yeah. People listening to this are like, magazines, what is that?
Yeah, every month we had to read a magazine and catch up on wrestling from the month before.
It's so true, yeah. And the results in that were usually several months delayed from the real thing.
WWE magazine was 2 months
old. Totally. Oh, wow, this is amazing. Oh, wait, I'm going to take that pita bread off. It's not that bad.
them not pita bread.
No, you're fine, darling. I appreciate it. And so,
I'll take it.
Oh, you're a sweetheart. Thank you. And so I chose all these wrestling schools. I finally ended up, my father didn't know that I was doing that, but I ended up in Pittsburgh, and I went to school at this place called Duquesne University. And the reason I did was because I was a really big fan of Shane Douglas growing up. And Shane Douglas had opened up the House of Hardcore 2 with Dominic DeNucci. And it was in New Brighton, Pennsylvania, which is 15 or 20 minutes south of Pittsburgh. So anyways, I had spoken to Shane Douglas. He called me because I sent all my info, and he called me. And I remember getting a phone call, and it was like, is Paul London there? Or may I speak with Paul London? And I was like, yes, may I ask who's calling? Because I used to always do that. And he goes, this is Troy Martin. And I almost choked on my tongue. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm talking to the franchise. And he gave me his real name. And I was ecstatic. And so I signed up. I was all set to go. And then when I enrolled in school, every college I applied to, also I got in, which was really strange, because I got into some pretty good schools I didn't expect to. I'm not the best student, which was strange. But anyways, by the time I got up to Pittsburgh, enrolled in class, Shane tears his bicep, and all the training was off. So I was up there for basically for no reason. So I had no choice but to go to class, which is why I made the dean's list. But then, so I didn't have any training, but I knew I needed to still go train somewhere. Right. So my next bet was, well, I'll just go to Memphis, because that's where all the wrestlers are. They grow out of the ground there, and they hang off of trees there.
Midwest.
Yeah. I'm like, you can't throw a rock in Memphis without hitting a pro wrestler. And so I transferred to the University of Memphis, much to my father's dismay. And that was my first experience with being a minority. But it was really interesting because I learned a lot. But there used to be a place called Power Pro Wrestling. And it morphed into Memphis Championship Wrestling, which then became one of the initial developmental territories. That's where they sent The Rock. That's where they sent Kurt Angle. That's where they sent a lot of guys there to cut their teeth in developmental. And that's where all of Sean's students went, like Spanky and Danielson and Lance Cade and Shooter Schultz. And there was a couple other guys that all went there right out of Sean's school, which we'll get to in a second. But anyways, I went to Memphis, and I ran into this guy named Outlaw Don Bass, who was, he was a local guy, but again, I was a little discouraged because I thought, I don't want to pay this guy $3,000 to train in a trailer park on carpet, it just wasn't what I wanted. And I told him that straight up, and he understood, and he said, I get it, it's cool. He wasn't offended, but he was happy I was honest with him. And so I dropped out of Memphis after a couple weeks and took a Greyhound bus back home, 13 hours. Literally the day I got back to Austin off the Greyhound bus, my friend called me and he said, turn on the TV, there's a news station about wrestling on the news. And sure enough, Ivan Putski had opened up a wrestling school that week in Austin.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was this long journey. I was sitting there wondering, am I supposed to do this? Is it even supposed to happen for me? What the hell?
I would think so. You came full circle.
I was falling into a depression, honestly, because I just thought maybe this isn't supposed to happen for me. But then I enrolled at Putski's like the very next day, and just never looked back. I just kicked ass. So he really broke me in and really beat me up, which was amazing. And then from there, I caught wind of Sean's school, but Sean's school was like $3,900, and I just couldn't afford it. Even the brochure for his school was like $25 or something for like the application. Yeah, I just couldn't afford it. So what I did was, I eventually, after I was working a little bit, I went down to train with his head trainer, Rudy Gonzalez. And so that's where like a big misconception comes. That Sean trained me. Sean didn't train me. Sean had already given his school up to Rudy Boy.
Okay.
Because he had a kid injured at his school. Sean did. And I think he was just trying to get rid of it at the time. I'm not really sure. So I did an interview, and somebody ran with the fact that I had trained with Rudy Boy and that it was Sean's trainer, and then that whole Sean thing came about, which was weird. So,
well, that's bad journalism. So
yeah. So, but that's to clarify all that.
A lot of that on the internet. A lot of the wrestlers now are getting smaller.
Sure.
Now that's got to be something I would feel that you're proud of. The monsters are not taking a back seat to the smaller guys.
Yeah, I think the emphasis now is on ability and in-ring skill. And don't get me wrong, there's some extremely skilled big men out there. Extremely skilled.
Like Brock Lesnar.
Brock is incredible. He's just a freak. Talented freak. I mean that every which way of respect. But the business has really evolved. Yes, Cesaro is another one. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. Freak of nature is strength. I could go on and on. So many big guys that have talent, but for the most part, they've really, the business has shifted to the small guys, to the guys that are more everyday. It's funny if you look back on it, like a movie like Predator, for example, which is one of my favorites. All those guys were yoked. You know what I mean? But would a special ops mercenary team really look like that right now? No. And so when you fast forward to the latest Predators, that's how they cast that film. Was like, we want more of like the actual mercenaries, more sinewy. It's actually like a muscular. It's not all bodybuilders, And it's weird. I mean, wrestling's evolved in a similar way. That's the first time I ever compared wrestling to Predator. Anyway.
You did have Jesse the Body in that movie. So
it was amazing. It was amazing. Slack jawed. I won't say it. But, yeah, it was great. But what I think it's done is, and I give WCW a lot of credit, WCW, for as chaotic as it was, they highlighted their lightweight division better than anybody. So when I was coming up, you got 3 hours of WCW Monday Nitro and 2 hours of Raw. So the first hour, you were definitely watching WCW because Raw wasn't on yet.
A little more coffee?
Yes, please, thank you. So when the first hour of WCW was over, that's when Raw would start, and I would usually switch to Raw for the 2 hours. But they would get a lot of the cruiserweight action out in that first hour of WCW, so I got the best of both worlds. But you look back at like Brian Pillman, and they even had Jushin Liger at one point early on. Johnny B. Bad. They had a lot of guys, and it just kept evolving. And then eventually, the Mexicans came in. They had Mysterio and all these guys.
A guy that many people, arguably, and I agree, is probably one of the best technical guys ever, Dean Malenko.
Incredible, yeah.
Cruiserweight.
Absolutely.
And Tully Blanchard.
Yeah. Although I think Tully Blanchard borderline
He was
heavyweight.
on the fence.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he wasn't this hulking, muscle-bound
Well, you
guy.
can even go back to,
he
like...
wasn't Luger,
Sure.
He wasn't Luger.
Well, but... you can even go back to, say, Kevin Von Erich, world class, the Von Erichs, whereas, like, Kerry was a big power guy, David was a big power guy. Kevin, was not only barefoot, but he was jumping off the top rope, doing crossbodies, doing all this amazing stuff. Lanny Poffo is another one that was, I think, a real innovator for lightweights because he was, as far as I know, he's one of the first guys to do springboards. Yeah, Lanny Poffo, a lot of people remember him as the genius. He was
We
incredible.
just interviewed him last month.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
He is so amazing.
And what a talker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, me too. But there were so many guys that I think paved the way for that lightweight style, even if they were big dudes. You can even go back to Antonio Roca, you know, way back. So that style, I think, has always been there. It's just that I think the money has been emphasized on the big size. You know, and so, yeah, the business has evolved. It's changed in the sense that the emphasis is on ability, on work rate, on athletes. You know,
you have a positive feeling about the direction of like WWE is going, or
I don't know about WWE in particular. I think they are onto something in the sense that they understood, hey, this isn't bodybuilders isn't the longevity here, you know.
right?
So I have faith in wrestling as a whole, that people are understanding it more and appreciating it more from an athletic standpoint, and not just looking at us as a bunch of like bad actors or something, you know.
I mean, you know,
There's still plenty of those.
Problem
Don't
is
get me
you
wrong.
get, well, yeah, that's the problem. You get somebody turned on to wrestling and they watch it, and then you get that one day where they just watch either a really awful match or just really bad acting usually.
Or it's just nothing but promos. And you're like, where's
Yeah.
the wrestling? This is crap.
Right. That's another thing, and it's turned into who can sell the T-shirts.
I make the joke that Raw is anything but Raw. It's overcooked. It's so overcooked. It's so overproduced. You know, I mean, there was a time when you would go to a wrestling show and you legit, there was a moment where you had some concern for your well-being because it was that chaotic. Now it's
easy to.
Oh yeah, especially
easy.
But now it's too safe. I feel, you know, even the barricades are overproduced. They're like these futuristic foam-covered black barricade things. It looks like it's out of some sort of weird science fiction spacecraft. It's just overproduced, and so the audience can sit back and know that they're not in any danger.
Yep, they're safe.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it creates judges. You know what I mean? So they sit there and then they can start. Oh, I know how this works. I know where they are at.
Yep.
The mat. You know.
And then you have the internet.
Yeah.
Which everybody's an expert on the internet.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
you have all these, you know, spoilers and everything else, and things, people knowing what's going to happen before it happens.
Totally. I bowled in high school, so I can try wrestling. It's not that hard, you know. Like, come on.
But the one thing I don't like about, I mean, you know, the internet's the internet. We can't get around it. It's going to be there. It's just that WWE used to do so much better protecting kayfabe.
Absolutely.
Now you have Rock come out, cut a promo against Rusev, put him in his place, knock him out, and then later that night, someone's snapping a picture of the Lana, Rusev, and The Rock eating at a restaurant in Brooklyn.
Exactly. I didn't even know that happened, but I believe it.
Yeah.
But then I hear this thing about Mania. I didn't watch it. I didn't even watch it when I worked there, but because I wasn't on most of them. But I guess at like a Hall of Fame or something, they had all the DX guys, or like the NWO guys or something, like all hugging and stuff like that. And then like at the Mania, they came out like they were supposed to have some sort of feud.
Yeah.
And then that happens, and then they start hugging each other all over again. It's like, what is this? What is this?
Yeah, kayfabe's dead. I mean, even Stone Cold said it in a podcast with Triple H that day, and it's impossible with the internet, people with camera phones. And
Actually, I'll tell you something that really discouraged me was I was in New Mexico a couple weeks ago, just kind of clearing my head. My mom lives there, so I was visiting as well. And it was the morning of Mania. I was at the gym in Rio Dosa, and there was a segment on Sports Center that was it was called Behind the Curtain. And they went in depth with Paul Levesque, also known as Triple H, and they went behind the scenes, and they showed the guys on the headsets, and it just exposed it. Oh, and I just thought, these guys care more about trying to be household names than they do now about protecting their business.
that's just the way it is.
I mean, there was a segment where they showed Paul Levesque at the training center telling these guys how they should do this and that better. And then there was a segment where they showed, like, what's the dude that holds the lantern? What's that guy?